Imagine a weapon, not one forged from steel or packed with explosives, but a weapon of blood and lineage. A weapon so powerful it could bring a nation to its knees without a single shot being fired. In the summer of 1940, as the world burned, the Nazis believed they had found such a weapon. And his name was Edward. This is not a story of what did happen. It's a story of what almost did. A story of espionage, betrayal, and a plot so audacious it sounds like fiction. A plot to kidnap a king and turn him into a puppet. We all know the man. Edward, the Duke of Windsor. The king who had thrown away an empire for the woman he loved, Wallis Simpson. By 1940, they were figures of tragic romance, living a life of aimless luxury in a Europe that was collapsing around them. When Paris fell to the German army, they fled south, first to Spain, and then to the glittering, sun-drenched coast of Portugal, Lisbon. In 1940, it wasn't just a city, it was the world's waiting room. A chaotic cauldron of spies, refugees, diplomats, and schemers. And at its very center were the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, the most famous and most vulnerable couple on the planet. To the British government, under the iron-willed leadership of Winston Churchill, the Duke was a problem, a security risk. His pre-war sympathies for Germany were no secret. His 1937 visit with Adolf Hitler had been a propaganda coup for the Third Reich. He was bitter, resentful of his family, and openly critical of the war. He was a loose cannon on the deck of a sinking ship. But to the Nazis, he was not a problem. He was an opportunity. In Berlin, a plan was hatched in the highest echelons of the SS. It was codenamed Operation Willi. The mastermind was the brilliant, ruthless head of foreign intelligence, Walter Schellenberg. The objective was chillingly simple. Get the Duke. Schellenberg saw what Churchill feared. He saw a man with a wounded ego, a man who believed he had been wronged, a man who might be persuaded that his destiny was not to live in exile, but to return to England as a peacemaker. A king who could end the war and reclaim his throne, with Germany's help, of course. The plan had two phases. Phase 1 was seduction. An agent was dispatched to befriend the Windsor's Spanish hosts. Whispers were planted in the Duke's ear, suggestions that the British Secret Service, acting on the orders of his own family, were planning to assassinate him. They played on his paranoia, feeding him lies wrapped in half-truths. Simultaneously, Germany's foreign minister, Joachim von Ribbentrop, sent a telegram with a direct offer. The Duke was promised protection. He was promised that, should Germany win the war, they would place him back on the British throne. And they offered him a staggering sum for his cooperation. 50 million Swiss francs deposited in an account waiting for him. The Duke was listening. He complained to his Spanish friends that Churchill was treating him like a child. He delayed his departure from the continent, making excuses. He was waiting, watching, considering his options. In London, alarm bells were ringing. British intelligence, likely through their code-breaking operations at Bletchley Park, had intercepted the German communications. They knew about Operation Willi. They knew about the offer. Churchill was furious. He sent a series of increasingly blunt telegrams to the Duke. "Your Royal Highness has no choice but to leave for the Bahamas immediately," one read, an order thinly veiled as a request. He appointed the Duke governor of the Bahamas, a respectable post that was, in reality, a form of gilded exile designed to get him as far away from Europe as possible. But the Duke still hesitated. He claimed there were threats against his wife, Wallis. He claimed his house wasn't ready. And so Schellenberg initiated Phase 2, abduction. The plan was audacious. German agents would stage a border incident or a local riot near the Duke's villa in Estoril. During the chaos, a specialized team would snatch the Duke and Duchess and spirit them away. They even practiced a mock kidnapping. Another tactic was to convince the Duchess, who was deeply afraid of the war, that it was safer to remain under German protection. They believed if they could turn her, the Duke would follow. The air in Lisbon grew thick with tension. It was a silent, deadly chess match being played in the seaside villas and shadowy alleys. On one side, Schellenberg's agents, watching the Duke's every move, ready to pounce. On the other, a small team of British operatives, led by Major Hugh Dodds of the Secret Intelligence Service, sent by Churchill with one mission: get the Duke on the boat to the Bahamas, no matter what. It came down to a few critical days in late July and early August. The Germans let it be known that if the Duke tried to leave, a little accident might happen on the way to the docks. A bomb, perhaps, or a stray shot during a staged altercation. They were applying maximum psychological pressure. The Duke was trapped. Betray his country for a promised crown from its mortal enemy, or obey the man he despised and sail into obscurity. On August 1st, 1940, a ship, the Excalibur, was waiting in Lisbon harbor. Major Dodds arrived at the villa. The Duke was still making excuses. Dodds's instructions from Churchill were clear. The Prime Minister had told him, use whatever force is necessary. We don't know exactly what was said in that villa. We don't know if threats were made or if the reality of his treasonous position finally sank in. But that afternoon, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, under heavy guard, were driven to the docks. They boarded the Excalibur and sailed for the Atlantic, leaving Operation Willi and Walter Schellenberg defeated on the shore. The plot failed. The Duke spent the war in the Bahamas, complaining about the heat and the quality of the wallpaper. But the question remains hanging in the air of history like smoke after a battle. How close did he come to saying yes? Was he a fool, easily manipulated by both sides? Or was he a willing participant in a traitorous plot who only backed out at the last possible second? We may never know for sure. But we do know that for a few tense weeks in the summer of 1940, the fate of the British monarchy, and perhaps the course of the war itself, rested on the weak shoulders of a bitter, exiled king. The most dangerous battles are not always fought on the front lines. Sometimes they are waged in the heart of a single, conflicted man.